The courtroom was packed beyond its fire code limits. Shoulders jammed, breaths hot, bodies pressed together in expectation and outrage. Camera lenses bloomed and blinked like a wall of mechanical eyes, their red dots recording every tremor of emotion, every micro-expression that might hint at remorse or guilt. Overhead, the old fan spun pointlessly, barely stirring the air, thick with whispers and judgment. At the heart of it all, standing rigid between two federal marshals, was Captain Elena Ward. She wore her dress uniform like a shroud, immaculate, metal stripped, nameplate missing. The chain between her wrists glinted every time she shifted, an accent that said more than any word the prosecution could muster. Her face was unreadable, jaw clenched, eyes flat, every muscle beneath her olive skin burning with restraint. A voice thundered above the crowd, slicing through the thick haze of expectation. "You are an embarrassment to your country, Captain Ward," barked Prosecutor Hargrove, a mountain of a man with a bristling gray mustache and the easy contempt of someone who had never known real fear. "This court will not tolerate cowardice, let alone treason, under the guise of duty. Do you understand?" Elena did not respond. She stared straight ahead, her eyes fixed not on the prosecutor, nor on the sneering judge, nor on the courtroom spectators who gorged themselves on her disgrace. She looked past them, to the brass eagle atop the American flag behind the bench. Its wings were spread, but it was rooted, unable to fly, only to watch. Hargrove paced before her like a wolf circling a wounded animal. "Let the record show that the defendant refuses to answer, a coward to the end. Is that it, Captain? You're not even woman enough to defend yourself." The room rumbled with laughter, a wet, ugly sound, echoing off the marble walls. Elena flinched, just for an instant. In the first row, a teenage boy, her nephew, maybe, covered his face with his hands. Someone snapped a picture. Someone else muttered, "Disgraceful." The judge rapped the gavel, perfunctory and tired, as if he'd already decided her fate and was just waiting for lunch. Hargrove turned to the audience, arms outstretched. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you see here is the face of betrayal. A decorated officer, entrusted with the nation's secrets, and what does she do? She hands them over to our enemies. She places American lives at risk, undermines everything our flag stands for, and then, when called to account, she hides behind her silence." He spun back to Elena, lowering his voice to a growl. "Do you have anything to say for yourself, Captain Ward?" 1,000 faces leaned in, some hungry for drama, others for blood. A woman with trembling hands scrawled notes onto a yellow legal pad, her eyes never leaving Elena's face. Silence. It stretched and stretched, until the judge finally sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Captain Ward, I am obligated by the laws of this nation to ask you one last time. Do you wish to address the court in your defense?" Elena's voice, when it came, was so soft it was almost drowned by the whir of cameras. "No, Your Honor." Her lawyer, a thin man in a wrinkled suit, exhausted and defeated, shifted beside her. He looked as if he might try again, but Hargrove cut him off with a wave. "Well then," Hargrove barked, "let's hear from the prosecution's star witness." The heavy wooden doors creaked open. A man entered, broad-shouldered, uniform pressed, every metal gleaming. Colonel Winters, Elena's former commanding officer. The audience murmured approval. He was a hero, a man's man. Winters marched to the witness stand with the assurance of someone who had nothing to fear. He locked eyes with Elena. For a heartbeat, something like regret flashed across his face. Then it was gone. "Colonel Winters," Hargrove began, "would you describe the defendant's character during her service under your command?" Winters straightened. "Captain Ward was disciplined, resourceful. She inspired trust. That's what makes this betrayal all the more painful." "And you have no doubt about her guilt?" Winters paused, his jaw flexing. "None. The evidence is overwhelming." Someone in the back snorted. Elena kept her eyes forward. Hargrove let the silence linger, then turned on Elena with sudden venom. "You see, Captain? Even those who once respected you have turned their backs. You are utterly alone." Elena stared at Winters. For a moment he faltered, his hand tightening on the edge of the witness stand. Their eyes met. There was something unspoken there, something sharp and desperate. But Winters looked away. A wave of humiliation washed over Elena. Not because of the chains or the stares or the sneers from people who once called her comrade. It was the silence, the absence of anyone willing to speak the truth. A voice rose from the gallery, shrill and raw. "You let my son die." A woman, her hair in a bun, her hands clawed white around her purse, stood sobbing. The bailiffs moved in, but she pressed forward. "You could have saved him. You could have saved all of them." Elena's throat constricted. The judge banged his gavel. The woman was escorted out, her cries echoing like accusations in Elena's skull. Hargrove didn't miss a beat. "That's the legacy you've earned, Captain. A nation betrayed. Families shattered. Lives destroyed. The room, the city, the country, everyone was watching. Elena's disgrace was not just hers to bear. It was public property now, a performance to be consumed, gossiped about, spat out. Every whisper, every tweet, every headline would etch her name deeper into the story of shame. And through it all, Elena stood silent, shackled and unmoved, her secret burning a hole in her chest, her dignity the last fragile thing left to her. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to the channel. The door of her cell clanged shut, sealing her into a pocket of stale air and fluorescent light. Elena sank onto the metal cot, her hands still cuffed, her wrists aching with each pulse. The courthouse's roar. Applause, outrage, the ghostly echo of the woman's sobs, lingered in her ears like tinnitus. In the silence, time folded in on itself. She squeezed her eyes shut and let the memories surge. It began with a midnight summons. The kind that made your stomach knot before you'd even answered the phone. "Ward," she'd barked, half asleep. "Report to West Building. Now." No explanation, just a deadline and the dull certainty of trouble. The Pentagon at night was a hive of ghostly corridors and murmured secrets. Elena walked them with steady steps, but her heart rattled. 2 armed men waited for her at the end of the hallway, flanking an unmarked door. Inside, a woman in civilian dress regarded Elena with eyes that missed nothing. Her badge read only K. Fisher. There was no smile, no pleasantries. "We have a problem in Astana," Fisher said without preamble. "A leak. Names of our deep assets are about to be auctioned. We need you to retrieve the file before the list changes hands. You will have 0 backup. If captured, we will deny knowledge of your existence." Elena nodded. This wasn't her first black job, but something in Fisher's voice chilled her. "There's more," Fisher continued. "If you're compromised, your only priority is to keep the file from being linked back to us. Even if it means burning your cover, burning yourself." "Understood," Elena said, though her mouth was dry. Her cover was immaculate. An American trade diplomat with forged letters and a briefcase she checked every 30 seconds. She rehearsed her alias until it felt like her own skin. The city was a maze of concrete and suspicion. Every hotel room was a listening post, every taxi a potential tale. Her contact was a gaunt Kazakh man with nicotine-stained fingers. They met in a cafe thick with steam and the smell of burnt coffee. He slid a flash drive across the table, tucked under a napkin. "Only plug it in when you're alone," he whispered, voice trembling. "They are watching." Elena's every instinct screamed danger, but she kept her face still. "How much time?" "Hours. Less." She nodded, forced a smile. Outside, she felt the prickle of eyes on her back as she walked to the hotel, the flash drive like a shard of ice in her pocket. She rode the elevator alone, fingers tapping a nonsense pattern on the railing. Floor 17. Room 1706. She double-locked the door, checked for bugs, drew the curtains. Alone, she plugged in the drive. At first, the files meant nothing. Code names, locations, snippets of intercepted conversations. But as she read deeper, a slow horror unfurled. The leak didn't just compromise U.S. assets. It included civilian informants, even children. If this list got out, it would be a massacre. Her hands shook. No mistakes, she whispered to herself, steeling her nerves. But as she scanned the data, her phone vibrated. A single, encrypted message. Abort. Return to extraction. Do not engage. She stared at the screen, heart hammering. There was no way. If she left now, dozens, maybe hundreds, would die. She hesitated, breath catching in her chest. Orders are orders. But this can't be right. She made her decision in the space of a single, shattering heartbeat. She burned the drive. Not erased. Burned. Actual flames. In the hotel bathroom sink. Stinking of scorched plastic and fear. She flushed the ashes, heart pounding. Somewhere in the city, her would-be buyers waited. She'd have to improvise. In the morning, she let herself be seen. Deliberately, in the wrong places, making calls she knew were intercepted. She staged her own betrayal, feeding her trackers a breadcrumb trail designed to point away from the innocent, toward herself. When the Kazakh security forces stormed her room, she was waiting with a story. One carefully crafted to make her look like a lone operator out for herself, not a U.S. agent. They believed it almost too eagerly. For 3 days, she was held in a windowless cell, interrogated by men with cold eyes and softer hands than she'd expected. She gave them nothing except eventually a confession. Not the truth, but a believable lie. She sold herself as a disgruntled contractor, willing to sell secrets for the right price. They recorded everything, salivating. Then, in the dark, Fisher's final message reached her, coded in the news crawl of the cell's flickering television. Mission accomplished. Remain in character. Extraction in motion. Came with no comfort. Only the reminder, if anyone got wind of the real mission, the fallout would be catastrophic. It had to end with her disgrace, her name in the mud. A guard's voice dragged Elena out of the memory. Dinner. She stared at the tray, appetite gone. The cell blurred and wavered. Had it been worth it? She thought of the names on that list. The little girl in the photograph, clutching a stuffed bear, now safe because Elena had not followed orders. The informants who would never know her face. The parents who would never realize how close death had come to their door. She had chosen them over her own future, her own honor. The price was her name, spat on by strangers. Her mother's voice broken on the phone. How could you? She'd wanted to scream the truth, to shatter the courtroom's certainty with a single sentence. But every rule she'd lived by, every lesson drilled into her bones, told her silence was the last act of service she had left. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Her lawyer appeared, eyes red, a new document in hand. They're moving up your sentencing, he said quietly. Tomorrow. Elena nodded, voice steady despite the storm inside her. Understood. He lingered. Elena, if there's anything at all you want to say. She almost told him. Almost. But she shook her head, jaw set. Some truths were heavier than any prison. The door shut. The lights flickered. Alone in the cell, Elena pressed her forehead to the cold wall and tried to summon strength from a memory. The child's smile unknowing. The world unknowing. Her sacrifice unacknowledged. Invisible. She exhaled slowly, pain and pride in equal measure. She could endure anything, she told herself. For them, she already had. They brought her back into court with the same heavy shackles, the same hush of dread and malice. The media crowd had doubled overnight. Their camera lights flickered with the greedy pulse of a feeding frenzy. Elena kept her gaze level, counting the heartbeats it took to cross the short distance from the holding cells to her seat beside her wilted attorney. Each step felt like walking through molasses and flame. The judge's voice cut through the static. Proceed, Mr. Hargrove. Prosecutor Hargrove's smile was a predator's, broad and cold. The people call Specialist Dana Avery. The doors opened. Elena flinched. Dana had served under her for 2 years. A kid with quick hands, eager eyes, and more faith in the system than sense. Dana's hair was shorter now, jaw set in brittle resolve. She avoided Elena's gaze as she took the stand. Hargrove's tone was gentle, almost paternal. Specialist, can you tell the court about your experience working under Captain Ward? Dana swallowed, her fingers twisting in her lap. She was sharp, demanding. We all looked up to her. And how did that change, specialist, on the night of February 14th? A tremor. We'd been briefed to expect a routine transfer. Captain Ward. She ordered us to stand down, said there was a change in plans. She took the briefcase herself. She didn't explain. Hargrove nodded, sympathetic. How did that feel, being left out of the loop by your commanding officer? Dana's jaw clenched. I trusted her. We all did. But then, after everything happened, she broke off, eyes shining with angry tears. We realized she'd been lying. The jury leaned forward. Elena felt their stares like stones. She wanted to reach out, to explain, to tell Dana she had saved more than she would ever know. But her silence was an iron mask. She couldn't break it, not even now. Hargrove pounced. Did you ever imagine, specialist, that your captain would sell out her own team? Dana's face twisted, torn between loyalty and fury. No. But after the evidence came out, the files, the phone records, it's clear she betrayed us. She betrayed me. The courtroom rumbled with satisfaction. Dana was led away, shoulders hunched, as if the testimony itself had cost her everything. Elena's lawyer attempted a cross-examination, but the judge cut him off. Unless you have something new, counselor, let's move on. We have a schedule to keep. Another witness, another wound. Her old friend, Captain Ronan Trask, entered next. Elena had pulled him out of a burning Humvee once, years ago in a different desert. Now he looked through her like she was glass. Hargrove's questions danced on the edge of slander. Captain Trask, you and the defendant shared a close professional relationship, didn't you? Trask nodded, careful. We served together in multiple theaters. She was brave. And yet you submitted a formal complaint about her conduct last year? A pause. Yes. She started acting secretive. Paranoid. She shut people out. She changed. Hargrove let the words linger, filling the air with doubt. On the defense's turn, Elena's lawyer asked, did you ever see Captain Ward harm a teammate, Captain Trask? No. But trust is everything in our line of work. When that broke, so did the team. He looked at Elena then, just for a moment, and his eyes brimmed with something between pity and fear. She willed him to understand, to remember all she had done for the people who would never know her name. But Trask looked away. Outside the courthouse, protesters swelled in number. Signs waved, Ward the traitor, no mercy for betrayal. On television, analysts dissected her silence, twisting it into evidence of guilt. Talk show hosts sneered. If she were innocent, she'd speak up. Even the military, once her home, issued a statement distancing itself from her unconscionable actions. Her mother called again that night, voice shaking. The call routed through her lawyer for security. Elena, please, just tell me it's not true. Elena pressed the phone to her cheek, her eyes burning. I'm sorry, Mom, she whispered, fighting the urge to sob. I can't. The phone clicked. Silence. The days bled together in an endless rhythm of humiliation and isolation. Lunch was a tasteless blur. Sleep came in fits, haunted by dreams of gunfire and children's voices calling out in languages she didn't speak. Each morning, the headlines grew crueler. Ward refuses to defend herself. What is she hiding? Secret motives or simple treason? Her attorney's face was pale with exhaustion. They've scheduled sentencing. The prosecution is pushing for the maximum. There's talk of a public example. Elena nodded, numb. She watched a crow hop across the sliver of window in her cell, free and oblivious. One afternoon, she glimpsed someone in the gallery. A man in a dark suit, face in shadow, watching her with two keen eyes. For a moment, she thought it was Fisher, her handler. But when she blinked, the seat was empty. The system was working exactly as intended. She was alone, utterly, perfectly alone. The next day's session was the worst yet. Hargrove brought in the grieving father of a soldier lost in the operation. The man's face was carved from grief and rage. He pointed a trembling finger at Elena. Because of you, my boy isn't coming home. Because of your secrets, my family is shattered. You disgust me. There was nowhere to hide. The judge watched her, face heavy with pity and disdain. The jurors had stopped looking at her at all. She squeezed her fists so hard the cuffs bit her skin. For the first time, she thought she might not make it through. Hargrove ended the day with a flourish, reciting a list of alleged crimes, each more damning than the last. When he finished, the courtroom was silent, the verdict written in every face. Elena sat perfectly still, fire and ice in her veins. The cost of her silence pressed in on her from every direction. Her friends gone, her name poisoned, her family broken. But she held fast. For them, she thought. For the living. They could call her traitor, monster, disgrace. Let them. The truth would stay locked away, for now, until someone somehow cracked it open. Until then, she would not break. The night before her sentencing, the courthouse was quiet. Too quiet. Elena lay on her cot, staring at the pitted ceiling, her mind raw from weeks of humiliation. Every sound, distant voices, the scrape of shoes, the rattle of keys, kept her wound tight. She didn't sleep. She only waited. Somewhere far above her, a city hummed with electricity and news cycles. She imagined the headlines. Disgraced officer to be sentenced tomorrow. The talking heads rehearsing her downfall. The crowds ready to feast on her public demise. She almost wished they'd get it over with. The door slammed open, rattling her chains of thought. Her lawyer appeared, his face flushed with urgency, clutching a phone. He said nothing, only thrust the device at her, screen aglow with chaos. Twitter was on fire. A journalist's thread raced down the screen, thousands of likes and retweets ballooning in real time. Breaking. Anonymous whistleblower leaks classified files on Ward affair. Documents show Captain Ward was acting under direct orders from national intelligence. Her so-called betrayal was a sanctioned black op. Elena stared, unable to process. Her lawyer's hands shook as he tapped open email after email. Leaked briefings, decrypted voice memos, screenshots of top-secret directives, all stamped with the insignia of agencies that, until now, had denied she was ever one of theirs. Within minutes, the world was flipping upside down. He found his voice at last. Elena, they know. She barely managed a whisper. How? A knot of hope and terror twisted inside her. She imagined Fisher somewhere in the bowels of Washington, coolly authorizing a leak, or some nameless analyst deciding she'd suffered enough. But she didn't dare believe it. Not yet. A guard burst in, nearly tripping over himself. You need to come with me. Now. The courthouse, just hours before set for her public sentencing, was a siege zone. Reporters clogged the steps, jostling and screaming questions. Protesters had returned, but now their signs were scrawled with confusion, some torn, some hastily repainted. Ward, hero or traitor? Inside, the judge's chambers buzzed with frantic energy. Elena sat between her lawyer and two stone-faced marshals, hands still cuffed but posture different now. Less the sacrificial lamb, more the caged wolf. A pair of government lawyers rushed in, eyes wild, folders clutched to their chests like shields. We need a closed hearing. Immediately, the judge glared, patience shredded. You've had weeks to make your case. Now you want to talk. The senior lawyer spoke, voice tight. We have reason to believe the files circulating online are genuine. Captain Ward's actions, while unconventional, were executed at the highest level of authorization. She was following direct orders in the interest of national security. The judge's pen clattered to the desk. You're telling me this entire prosecution was a cover-up? The lawyer's jaw clenched. We can neither confirm nor deny, Your Honor. Anger surged in the judge's face. Well, you'll confirm it to my court. Right now. Elena watched the government's panic with numb fascination. Their story was unraveling. All their tidy narratives undone by a deluge of proof. She wondered if any of them felt the shame she'd carried alone. The court reconvened in a blur. Cameras rolling, the gallery packed to suffocation. The prosecution was white-faced, cornered, mumbling requests for delays. The defense stood tall, clutching printouts of the leaks, eyes blazing with vindication. The judge addressed the court, voice trembling with anger and something like awe. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have just received extraordinary new evidence, classified directives, signed at the highest levels, indicating that Captain Ward's actions were part of a covert operation." A stunned silence fell. Elena felt every gaze on her. Some stunned, some ashamed, some suddenly curious. Dana Avery, her former protégé, sat rigid in the gallery, mouth parted in disbelief. A journalist called out, "Does this mean she's innocent?" The judge, suddenly weary, glanced at Elena. "It means the court, and this country, owe her answers." The government's lawyers scrambled to control the narrative, demanding evidence be sealed, witnesses recalled, charges dropped. It was too late. The floodgates had burst. Every detail, the orders, the mission, the consequences now belonged to the world. Outside, the media swarmed. News anchors, faces taut with contrition, spun the story as fast as they could. Hero betrayed by her own government? Justice for Ward? Inside, the secret mission that saved hundreds. In living rooms across America, outrage shifted. Calls poured in, demanding accountability for those who'd hung Elena out to dry. Online, hashtags trended, #Ward was right, #real hero. Inside the courtroom, chaos reigned. The prosecutor, ashen and sweating, tried to apologize. Dana wept openly, her sobs cutting through the stunned silence. Ronan Trask stood in the back, hand over his mouth, eyes wide. Elena felt a surge of something unfamiliar, vindication, yes, but also grief. None of these people, not even her closest friends, had believed her. The system had failed her, sacrificed her for a story. She scanned the room for her mother and found her near the door, eyes brimming, hands pressed to her lips in wordless prayer. The judge rapped the gavel until the din settled. "Captain Ward, you are hereby released from custody. All charges are vacated. This court extends its deepest apologies for the grave injustice done to you." A murmur swelled, then a roar of applause, some genuine, some simply swept up in the tide. Elena stood, her legs nearly buckled, but she straightened, meeting the cameras head-on. The chains were gone. Afterward, a private room. Her lawyer hugged her, tearful. Her mother squeezed her until they both trembled. Reporters pounded on the doors. Elena felt hollow. The price had been her soul, her trust, her years, her name. Now she was free, but what was left? A phone buzzed in her pocket, slipped to her by an unseen hand. A text flashed from an unlisted number. "You did well. We'll be in touch." Elena smiled, a small, secret smile. The world knew the truth now, but only she would ever truly understand the cost. She walked to the window, looking out at the city roaring for her, and let herself hope, just for a moment, that she had not been broken for nothing. Freedom tasted strange, thin and metallic, like blood or adrenaline. The marble steps outside the courthouse burned beneath Elena's shoes as she stepped into the white-hot glare of camera lights. Reporters shouted her name, questions tumbling over each other. "How does it feel? Will you sue? Are you still loyal to your country?" She squinted, momentarily dazed by the intensity of attention that was, only yesterday, so venomous. Her mother was the first to reach her. "Elena!" Arms wrapped around her, fierce and shaking. Elena clung to her, breathing in the familiar scent of laundry detergent and hope, feeling the steady drum of her mother's heartbeat. Proof that, for now, she was safe. They stayed that way for a long time as the world spun around them. Lights flashing, strangers weeping or shouting or simply staring. Then, awkwardly, her lawyer and a few old friends pressed forward. Dana Avery, her protégé, who had damned her on the stand, stood uncertain, face blotched with tears. Elena met her eyes, searching for anger, but found only confusion and regret. Dana started to say something, then stopped, voice lost in the cacophony. Elena gave her a small nod. It was enough for now. A black sedan arrived to whisk her away from the chaos. She slid inside, leaving the courthouse and its noise behind. Through tinted windows, She watched the crowds recede, saw the first news trucks already packing up. Her lawyer handed her a folder. Legal apologies, settlements, promises of restoration. You'll be cleared, fully reinstated. They'll make it right, he said, as if words could stitch together what had been torn apart. Thank you, she said quietly, voice nearly lost in the hum of the engine. He gave her a sad, apologetic smile, unsure what else to offer. He looked away, as if seeing the enormity of her loneliness for the first time. Her phone pulsed with messages. Strangers hailed her as a hero. Politicians clamored for interviews. A dozen publishers wanted her memoir. The same media that had dragged her was now desperate to sanctify her. But Elena felt only tired. She let her head fall back, eyes closed, letting the movement of the car lull her toward something like peace. Days blurred. News cycles shifted from condemnation to adulation. She watched herself on television. Her name, her face, her story transformed into a symbol, a lesson, a warning. They played clips of her in uniform, recited her record, dissected her silence. They called her brave, steadfast, a victim of injustice. Some even wept for her on live broadcasts. None of it felt real. Letters arrived by the boxful, thanks from families who'd never know how close they came to tragedy. Apologies from strangers who'd believed the worst. Invitations to speak at banquets or join advocacy groups. Her inbox overflowed with noise. A letter from Ronan Trask, her friend, who had doubted her, arrived late at night. I'm sorry, Elle, it read, scrawled and trembling. I should have trusted you. I was afraid. I hope someday you'll forgive me. If you ever need anything, I'm here. She reread it twice, then placed it atop the others, unanswered, for now. Dana Avery came to see her in person. They sat at Elena's kitchen table, mugs of untouched tea cooling between them. Dana fumbled with her hands. I didn't know, she whispered. I thought you'd abandoned us. I know, Elena said gently. It's over. Dana sobbed, the tension breaking at last, and Elena let her cry, grateful for this small, awkward healing. The Pentagon called. The Joint Chiefs wanted a meeting, a ceremony, a medal. Elena refused. She had no desire to be paraded as a symbol by the same system that had tried to erase her. She asked for her discharge papers instead. On her last morning in uniform, she stood in front of her mirror, straightening her jacket, fixing her medals. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel pride. She had given everything to the ideals stitched into this cloth: duty, courage, sacrifice. She had kept the faith even when no one else did. At the exit interview, Fisher was waiting. You did well, Ward, she said, her face unreadable as ever. You know the stakes. You know the cost. I know, Elena said. But was it worth it? Fisher shrugged. That's not for me to say. History is written by survivors. Their handshake was brief, businesslike, but Elena caught the glimmer of respect in Fisher's eyes. In the weeks that followed, Elena tried to find her footing in the ordinary world. She ran errands, walked her mother's dog, ate quiet dinners by the window. Sometimes she dreamed of the mission, of flames, of narrow escapes, of innocent faces she'd never meet. Sometimes she woke in the night, heart pounding, expecting the clank of a cell door. Some days, she answered messages from those she'd saved, coded emails, cryptic notes of gratitude. I heard what you did. Thank you for protecting my family. We're alive because of you. I wish the world knew everything, but I'm glad you do. She smiled at these. It was enough. An autumn evening, golden and soft. Elena walked the city streets, blending with the crowds. She passed a mural painted on a wall. A figure in uniform, arms outstretched, gaze level. Her likeness, rendered by someone who had never met her but felt her story. A child pointed at the painting, tugging her mother's sleeve. Is she a hero, Mom? Elena paused, listening. The mother knelt, considering. She did something very hard, for the right reasons. That's what matters. For a moment, Elena stood there. No longer a disgrace, Not quite a saint, just a woman trying to live with the cost of courage. That night, as the city quieted and her apartment glowed with lamplight, she received a new message, a string of numbers, an address, a request for help, unofficial, urgent, impossible to ignore. Elena closed her eyes. She thought of all she'd lost, all she'd gained, and the people still left in the shadows. Unseen, unthanked, still in need of someone to risk everything for them. She opened her closet, reached for the old duffel bag, and smiled. She wasn't finished, not yet. She stepped out into the night, a survivor, a fighter, a truth only she could hold. For the first time in a long while, Elena felt free.